Well, it's a question that would have been unheard of perhaps a few short years ago, but 3 months into the Obama administration, some out there are actually asking if the Republicans are an endangered species. And while GOP veterans like Jeb Bush and Mitt Romney were off on that listening tour this week, our own Joe Scarborough, former GOP congressman, wondered if the GOP had lost its way.
Over the past decade, we've spent too much money. We've spread our armies across the globe. We've changed rules on Wall Street that allowed bankers to leverage 40-to-1. That's not conservative. That's radical.
And joining us is Ari Melber, is a Democratic strategist, and Lenny Alcivar is a Republican strategist. Lenny, I'll start off with you. Is Joe right?
He's absolutely right. He pointed out very well, Tamron, in 1964, in 74, in 1992, the Republican epitaph was written by pundits. What happened? The Republicans came roaring back. But we have an opportunity now in the aftermath of a very, very humongous budget being presented by this president, more money potentially on the table for banks, and unease amongst Americans on the part of their uneasiness with regard to the president's spending, to come back. And polls are showing in the United States right now that when Americans are asked if they would vote for a Republican or a Democrat for Congress, it's about even. So these Republican epitaphs have been written for a long time, and in politics things change very quickly, Tamron. Just ask the Democrats. A week ago, they were praising Arlen Specter's move to the Democratic Party. Now, Tamron, some of them want to give him back.
Well, Ari, you know, that is interesting. We know in life and in politics and all things do certainly change. But how comfortable are the Democrats right now, Ari, that the endangered species label should be under the name Republican?
Well, I think they're comfortable. I think they've got a growing majority here in the Senate, something that looks close to filibuster proof. Lenny mentioned the polls. What you have in the polls is 1 out of 4 Americans self-identifying as Republicans. That's one of the lowest numbers we've seen in decades. And that, I think, is because not only did the Republicans get pummeled pretty badly in this election, but then they turned around afterward, and rather than working with President Obama on any issues, rather than introducing a budget, of course they had that document that had no numbers in it that they were calling a budget, rather than doing anything serious, they basically came and made up a lot of attacks and assaults on President Obama. At the end of the day, those attacks aren't working. People want to see solutions, and you've got a Republican Party that's run by figures in the past, people like Dick Cheney, who's really a better spokesman for war crimes than he is for continuing some kind of Republican agenda.
Ari, there are some articles out there who are predicting that by 2010 will not be as bad for the Republicans as many are suggesting, that they do have control over certain parts of this country, certain districts.
Well, they are a regional party at this point, and they did improve, to be fair, in the South. So you did see, if you look at those big maps, most of the country went bluer, but in some places they did pick up some votes and they went a little redder. The problem, again, is that they don't have a national message right now, and they don't have national spokespersons. Arlen Specter's the Republican people are talking about most, except he dumped them and he's sort of a Democrat now, or at least that's what he's saying. Dick Cheney, I mentioned, a figure from the past. Newt Gingrich, a figure from the past. Lenny's got to tell us who's the voice of the Republican future.
Lenny, I got to give you a shot at this, because you did have Jeb Bush saying that you can't keep talking about the Reagan years and the Reagan era, but I've got a statement from the Family Research Council, and they criticize this new effort by Jeb Bush and the others, saying no one is suggesting that we try leaving the past, but President Reagan's principles are the ones that guided our nation from its very inception. Turning away from those fundamental truths would be a death knell for the GOP, as little would be left to distinguish the Republicans from the Democrats.
Well, there's no question about it. We do have to move ahead, Tamron, and we have to find new voices in our party. You can be for new voices like those of Tim Pawlenty in Minnesota, those of Governor Bobby Jindal in Louisiana, and also remember the greatness of Ronald Reagan. But I think the point is that you cannot simply look back with nostalgia at the good old days. Republicans can't afford to wait for something bad to happen to Democrats. We have to seize the initiative. And that's exactly what we're doing in states all around the country. And when you look at the ideas that are being put forth, whether it's on health care or otherwise, against the backdrop of excessive spending in Washington, a budget, frankly, that looks, on the part of President Obama's, a lot like the budget that former President George Bush put forth, Americans are increasingly uneasy. So Ari's right, we do have a problem, but the death knell for Republicans has been written over and over, and guess what? It never works. We come back strong and better and tougher, and that's exactly what we're going to do in 2010.
Okay, gentlemen, I wish we had more time because I know Ari's perched and ready to say something.
No, take your time.
But we're out of time. To be continued. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you both.